So I want to go to the lab and begin connecting some things. Specifically, I want to use, well, I guess a few components. I'm going to start with the manual starter. And before I go to the lab, I always like to take a minute to essentially figure things out and draw some things. All right, so here we go. So essentially, we were talking about the power for this building and the fact that it's a three-phase system. So I have L1 and L2 and L3, and if you will permit me, I'm going to draw my neutral over here. Okay, that's the neutral. Okay, and so what I want to do is something relatively simple. In that, I want to talk about the manual starter, as I've already communicated. In the book, it's drawn something roughly like this. Alright, so there's my three different phases and my overloads. So this is the manual starter. And you guys may have looked at it enough that it's obvious to you, but I want to talk about it anyway. And that is, I just want to kind of clarify what happens in this manual starter. So I want to do something in the lab that's relatively simple, but that gives us a visual indicator of what's going on. Okay, so basically what I want to do is power something that I can see. Specifically, I want to power some lamps. So I'm just going to put a lamp on each one of these lines. You'll recall that our voltage from the line to neutral is 120 volts, and so we'll be able to power a lamp. And so I hate to use L1, 2, and 3 again, but maybe you'll forgive me. We'll call this lamp 3, and this is lamp 2, and this is lamp 1. And then in order to complete the circuit, then essentially I have to go from the far side of the lamp to neutral. Okay, so that is, in a nutshell, the circuit that I want to connect in the lab. Okay, I want to redraw, if you will allow me, this part of the circuit. Because I want it to be very evident what happens here with a manual starter. So if you'll allow me, I want to redraw the contacts of this manual starter to look like this. I'm going to take another liberty here, and that is that I'm going to put the control for this on the bottom. Okay, so here is the off position, and here is the on position. Okay. And so now when I switch this manual starter to the on position, these three contacts close, current goes through, we're going to power our lamps. Okay, and so the biggest thing that I want you to understand is the fact that the manual starter is really basically nothing but the contact points are load contacts, and then the manual mechanism for opening and closing. That's what a manual starter is. And of course the documentation or book talks about the overloads. Okay, they're part of that too. But the more significant part is the fact that this is really just a switch, okay, that switches all three lines when we move the manual position to the on or off. Okay. All right, so here's the diagram, the wiring diagram that I want to put together in the lab. So I want to sort of speed through our lockout tagout. Okay. So essentially, you can see that this disconnect is in the powered off position. Okay. I'm going to put essentially my lockout component on there, and this thing's locked. All right, and so regardless of what may be going on the other side of the machine, I know that my set of circuitry here is locked out and safe to work on. Okay, so what I always like to do, and I guess this is just a personal preference, but I like to start with the grounding circuits. Okay, this is our safety circuit, and by the way, the safety circuit does not appear on our wiring diagram. Okay, so because generally speaking, well, the safety circuits just don't. That's just kind of a common standard way of doing things. Okay, all right, but that's it for the safety circuit. Is just essentially to connect the various ground positions together. Okay, now one of the things that then I like to do next is to connect my neutrals. Okay, and so I'm going to use a blue wire for neutral. I don't have a white one, but this is as close as I've got to a neutral color. Okay, and so what I'm going to do with that is from neutral, I'm going to go to the neutral side of my first lamp, and then just basically I'm going to do the neutrals for all of the lamps. That's basically all that is going to take place with these lamps. Okay, all right, so that's it. That's the neutrals. Okay, so if we follow this path, going from the neutral of our disconnect to the to one side of a lamp, and then we just jump there to the next side of the lamp, jump there to the next side of the lamp. Okay, so we can compare that to our wiring diagram, and that should appear correct. All right, so now let's start hooking up some control circuitry. Okay, and so essentially I would start with line 1, but when I have wire hanging in there, it's going to kind of obstruct the view. Okay, so I'm gonna not do that. I'm going to start with line 3. Okay? And so where's line 3 going to go? Well, line 3 from our disconnect is going to go to line 3 on our manual starter. Okay? And so then the same thing, line 2 of our disconnect goes to line 2 of our starter. Line 1 of our disconnect is going to go to line 1 of our starter. All right, so now essentially what we need to do is go from the contact side of the starter. Okay, and so let's see, I think I'm going to follow the same pattern. I'm going to go from T3, and what I want T3 to do is I want that to power light number 3. Okay, so I'm going to go right there. There's my third lamp. Okay, that's the one that's going to represent a power when there is a connection on line 3. Okay, so T2 to my second lamp, I'm going to power it right there. T1 is how I'm powering essentially my first lamp, and it goes right there. All right, so it's probably a little bit common to want to do some second checking to make sure. But as the complexity of our wiring increases, that's going to become problematic. So generally speaking, my recommendation is do your checking as you go. When I connect to one end of the wire and the other end of the wire, just put it in the right place. And that way, when it gets busy, I don't have to go back and recheck. All right, so obviously I've removed my disconnect. So what I'm seeking to prove at this point is let's turn on power onto our power supply. Okay, it's showing 3 lamps. That's essentially showing power on my 3 different lines, okay? And we were talking about what the source of the building is. We can also see that this power supply is designed for 120 208, okay? Obviously it matches the power of the building, okay? And so that's a good thing, all right? So the next thing that I want to do is essentially I'm going to switch my disconnect, turn power on, okay? So power is now essentially on at this point. Okay, I can take my voltmeter and check, but if what I'm going to see from a rudimentary level is I've got power essentially to here to L1, 2, and 3. We're going to have power here to L1, 2, and 3. Obviously no lamps are on. Why is that? Well, the manual starter is in the off position. So when I turn it on, what would we expect to happen? Essentially those 3 lamps do light up. Okay, obviously that's what we've got. Okay, we can turn our manual starter back off. Now that was a trivial case. We're just trying to light some lights here at this particular stage. But that may be a good place to stop this video, and then we will go on to the next one. All right, so in terms of being safe, I'm going to turn things off, and want to make sure that nobody turns things on when this thing is maybe in some in-between state. So do my lockout, tag out. Okay, that's locked, keys in my pocket. Okay, thanks.